She's got her hand up.
Yeah, you go ahead and tell her you don't care about her. Tell that nice young lady from Ottawa that you don't give, quote unquote, a rat's ass what she has to say. You look her right in the eye and tell her that.
If you'll shut up, I will. First off, I appreciate the support. You can't, it's the same thing here. Someone wrote last week, a columnist here in town wrote last week, or 2 weeks ago, I didn't see it, but wrote, I was dead wrong on the Kessel trade, I was dead wrong on the Phaneuf trade, they've both been good trades, they've helped the team. Okay, so right away I get 6 or 7 emails from people. This so-and-so, Steve Simmons just wrote this, how do you feel about that? I'm like, well, if you dismiss the negative stuff, you can't accept the positive stuff as valid praise. In other words, so you're right. If I say I don't pay any attention to any of it, I'm dismissing your contribution and I apologize for that. But you can't have it both ways. I can't wave the newspaper when Steve Simmons writes something nice about me and say, look, and then say when he writes something nothing, well, he's an idiot. He's got to be an idiot every day, or he's got to know what he's doing every day. And I think he's an idiot every day.
Not easy. Not easy to be an idiot every day.
I can't wave the newspaper when he writes something good because I have to assume a lack of fundamental mental skills on a daily basis.
The bigger, to everyone's point, the bigger issue for me is that if it's on a website, is it journalism? Is it fandom? What is it?
You're not a journalist because a blogger said to me in all the years I've been in the business, what business are you in?
No, well, that's my point, and this is, I know Brian finds this hard to believe, but places like the Toronto Star and the CBC and Bell Globe Media, or whatever it's called now, CTV, they actually have ethics and standards. And they have rules and regulations, and they have legal issues that they have to protect their staff from.
I'm guessing it's a very short list.
The problem is that in the blogosphere, there's none of that. And so how do you find that person when they're wrong?
That's what I said.
And what do you do? How can you say, how accountable is that person? And if you're a fan, fantastic. But there almost should be an asterisk beside it saying, hey, I'm a fan, I'm only worried about my team, and I love my team. That's it.
Now, the argument on the other side, though, is that journalists, so-called, are too insider, that they're too, Deadspin always advertised itself as news without access, discretion, or favor, that they're not beholden to anyone, that they're not in with anybody. Now, that website to me has become just a lurid sort of gotcha site, which is trying to get pictures of quarterbacks with their shirts off at 2 in the morning in bars. It's not it's morphed out of being a sports site, but there is an element to that, isn't there, of not being.
Oh, there's always a fine line. It goes back to what we touched on in the previous session, was partnership, rights holders. Hey, listen, some of the greatest hockey and sports writers over in the 20s, 30s, and 40s and 50s were paid by the team to travel with the team, but we still loved reading their stories. They were paid per diems by the teams to travel, but we still like reading their stories and their objectivity.
Right, and they wrote articles of the program. They wrote pieces for the program. Okay, we got to take some questions because we've blabbered on long enough. Some questions. You just stand up and ask. Put your hand up. Yes, sir. Go ahead.
I guess from a media perspective, what does it do for a reporter? Say, for instance, the John Tortorella, Colletti reporter, from everybody else. What does that do for a reporter's reliability or accountability?
Well, he didn't call out a reporter. He called out Larry Brooks.
Larry Brooks, yeah. Well, if you're looking at it from the point of view of a team or a league, then that Larry Brooks has been trashed one more time. If you look at his newspapers saying, "Thank you very much. You got noticed at the press conference," and maybe the readers saying, "You know what? Hey, if Brooks and Tortorella are fighting, that's great shit."
Yeah, I think there's an element. In that case, unless you were exposed for doing something completely wrong, would probably hurt your reputation. But in a case like that, it probably enhanced Larry Brooks' reputation. Probably did.
Certainly in the New York,
but-
certainly in the New York newspaper market,
But
which
Ned,
is very
you
competitive.
deal with, there are baseball people there are baseball writers who are incendiary, right? They just look to stir stuff up.
Yeah.
I mean, that's their stock and trade, right? That's their provocateurs, and that's what they do, right?
That's what they get paid for. That's how they make their living.
So how do you deal with them?
Say hello and keep walking.
Another question. Yes, right here. Yeah, with the poppy on, yeah.
In our information technology era, and here we are talking about accountability, and we're talking about getting more fans in our seats. Isn't it good that we have bloggers out there causing a stir and getting people to talk? At the end of the day, society makes decisions, and we as individuals make decisions about what's right for us to do and not do. So isn't it something that's a benefit for us, and isn't it improving our game, getting more fans in the seats?
Absolutely, you're right. Next question.
I disagree in a sense. I disagree in a sense that the problem.
You've never been on the receiving end of one of these things, obviously. No, it's not a good thing. They write some awful, vicious things about it. I don't care so much about me, about our players, our coaches. No, I don't think overall it's a positive. That's the old theory that any publicity is good publicity. I don't buy that. I think bad publicity is bad publicity. And to me, I don't like the way it's gone. And it's gone, these guys have acquired credibility. Like, I've been at this long enough. And I'll feel and sound very old to a young man like you. But when I came in, you have a guy, say, doing the Toronto or the Vancouver Sun. I think 1987. So I'm an assistant GM. And the guy writes for the Vancouver Sun. And that's all he did. He had a column in the Vancouver Sun. Now, 10 years later, now CKNW is doing their pregame show, and they're like, well, we'd like you to come on and be a pregame host. And he's a good interview, so now he becomes a regular. Next thing you know, he's got a blog. Now, fast forward 10 years later, now he's got a website and a blog and Twitter, and now he's on Hockey Night, and now he's got 2 hours on The Fan. And so what's happened is there's been this expansion, this like rapid, multi-level expansion of platforms for all these guys. That's the same guy. He hasn't acquired superior knowledge. He hasn't learned a goddamn thing since he had a column, but now he's got 8 platforms, and he bought a suit. Now he's on Hockey Night in a suit.
Right, but I think the point I would make is that the problem with the internet, well, not necessarily because there's a
It
lot
is
of
for him.
If he knows what he's doing,
there's
yeah.
a lot of misinformation out there is the problem.
People are giving them that platform.
But the problem is there's a lot of misinformation, sir, and that's the issue, is that there's no checks and balances. Because, for example, my colleague Pierre Maguire, okay, who is a very divisive personality. A lot of people really don't like him. A lot of people really do like him. There was a guy on a well-read blog in Montreal who spread the rumor that Pierre got his job with Pittsburgh because he married Scotty Bowman's daughter. It's completely untrue. There's no checks or balances in that. The guy can put it up on the internet and it lives on forever when you search Pierre Maguire. It's completely fabricated because he has no editor, there's no controls on him. He's just a guy standing on the street corner spouting stuff. And that's the issue, his responsibility.
Guy last year posted a phony Brian Burke Twitter account and trashed John Ferguson Jr. Okay, so do I think it's a good thing? No.
Checks and balances. That's what it's all about.
We need
It's
one
all
of
about
these
checks
guys
and
to lose
balances.
his house, and then it'll get better.